Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving straight into an absolute masterclass today. Picture this. It's incredibly humid down in Miami. The stakes of the 2026 World Cup are literally at their peak, and Brazil has just delivered a breathtaking 3-0 demolition of Scotland. We're going to break down exactly how this happened, step by step, and really look at the anatomy of this victory.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer gravity of what happened on that pitch, let's kick things off with the number 3. That's the number of consecutive World Cup games Vinicius Jr. has now scored in. By hitting the back of the net in this match, he joins an exclusive, legendary tier of Brazilian football royalty. I mean, we're talking about him rubbing shoulders with absolute icons like Ronaldo, Jairzinho, and Pelé. It's just phenomenal.
All right, let's get into it. Section 1, a disaster start, and Scotland's self-destruction.
Now, before we get completely lost in the Brazilian magic, we absolutely have to look at the defensive collapse that set the stage. Now, what's really interesting about this is how you have Scott McKenna on one side and Jack Hendry on the other, two center halves making almost identical catastrophic errors. McKenna takes way too long on the ball, suffers this momentary switch-off, and tries to casually play out of the back. And then Hendry is caught in possession doing the exact same thing. You know, in a high-pressure moment, when you were the very last line of defense, taking your eye off the tempo is just fatal. On both occasions, Vinny Jr. was right there, pouncing with incredible pace to brutally punish them. You just can't dribble out of the back slowly when one of the best players on the planet is hunting you down.
To give you a sense of how shockingly fast things unraveled, let's just walk through this incredibly chaotic first-half timeline. First, Scotland literally gives Brazil that opening tap-in after McKenna's blunder. Then, utter panic sets in as a second goal is scored off Hendry's mistake. But wait, it's immediately sent to a VAR review. And finally, just as halftime is on the horizon, Vinny Jr. pops up again in stoppage time with this devastating far post header. It was just a mounting nightmare for Scotland, played at a relentless, suffocating pace.
I actually want to pause on that middle timeline event for a second, because the tension inside that stadium was palpable. The commentary summed it up perfectly, saying, a huge sigh of relief if this were to be ruled out. That was exactly the feeling when VAR was checking that second potential goal for a coming together of legs involving Hendry. And it was ruled out. It was this mighty reprieve for Scotland that briefly kept their hopes alive. But, well, as we just saw on the timeline, that relief didn't last long at all.
Moving on to Section 2, the Vinny Jr. Masterclass, unstoppable pace and precision. The defining factor of that first half was exactly how he completely dismantled this defense. First, he punished those defensive errors instantly. I mean, he probably couldn't believe his luck with those gifts, but his absolute readiness to pounce is what makes him elite. Second, his reading of the game was just exceptional. Think back to that stoppage time goal. The ball is floating across the 6-yard box, and his run is perfectly timed. Third, the brilliant readjustment for that headed goal. Heading isn't even his best-known attribute, right? But he adjusted his line beautifully to guide it in. All of this culminating in his fourth goal of the entire World Cup tournament.
Now look, it wasn't for a complete lack of effort from the Scottish side. Nathan Patterson and Lewis Ferguson actually combined for an absolutely crucial goal line clearance. Vinny Jr. had used his blistering pace down the right side, played a quick 1-2, and set up Matías Cunha for a diving flick. If Patterson and Ferguson hadn't been right there to clear it off the line, Scotland could have easily found themselves in an even deeper hole before the whistle blew.
Let's head into the second half. Section 3, Scotland's fight back fails, finding Alisson's gloves.
So, Steve Clarke's squad comes out attempting a positive fightback to give the Tartan Army something, anything to cheer about. But their offensive ceiling became immediately apparent. Kieran Tierney delivers a really good ball into the box. Great direction, great pace. Scott McTominay gets his head on it, but under a super heavy challenge from Casemiro, he just couldn't get the power he needed. It goes straight into Alisson's gloves. And what's staggering here, this was Scotland's very first shot on target at this World Cup since John McGinn's goal against Haiti in their opening game. Let that sink in.
But if there was a silver lining for Scotland in that second half, it was definitely in goal. The contrast is just incredible. Angus Gunn has basically spent the season warming the bench at Nottingham Forest, yet here he is on the biggest stage in the world, producing top-class, highly agile saves to prevent Vinicius Jr. from running away with the game entirely. Vinny Jr. was coming at him with unbelievable pace, even trying to score with the outside of his right foot at one point, and Gunn stayed incredibly alert to keep him out.
Which brings us to the final stretch. Section 4. Cruising to victory and the return of Jogo Bonito.
Let's move to it and see how this builds, because despite Gunn's heroics, Brazil was just too much. They finally returned to that beautiful style of play we all know and love. This third goal is pure Jogo Bonito. Step 1, Bruno Guimaraes does incredibly well to win possession of the ball in midfield. Step 2, we see absolute patience and trickery from Guimaraes, culminating in this gorgeous flick with the outside of his boot. Step 3, Mateus Connor makes the run around and finishes with a simple, guided ball into the back of the gaping net. It was a goal of the highest quality, orchestrated completely by Guimaraes, and it put Brazil firmly in cruise control.
So, with Brazil leading 3-0 and the clock ticking into a minimum of 6 additional minutes, a massive question hung over that humid Miami stadium. Could Vinicius Jr. capitalize on a late counterattack and grab a historic hat-trick in stoppage time? Danilo sends a vicious ball across the face of the goal to the far post.
Oh, but it was just behind him. He saw it incredibly late, tried desperately to adjust, but just couldn't quite put it in the back of the net. And you know, that miss preserved a stunning piece of history. 1958 was the last time a Brazilian player scored a hat-trick at the World Cup finals. And who achieved that? None other than Pelé in the semi-final. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to see that legendary record matched.
Honestly, though, I highly doubt Vinicius Jr. is losing any sleep over that. Because the final scoreboard of Brazil 3, Scotland 0 paints a picture of absolute dominance. It was a stark contrast of Brazil's ruthless efficiency and elegant patterns against a Scottish side that simply couldn't overcome their own catastrophic defensive errors in those opening minutes.
Which leaves us with a massive question as we wrap up this explainer. Will Scotland's high-risk strategy of playing out from the back completely cost them their World Cup dreams, or can they recover their tactical discipline in time? They're currently sitting on 4 points, anxiously waiting to see if it's enough to advance. Think about that as you get ready for the next round of matches. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.